solo, solo.
102.7 WMOM. Welcome back into the Mom Studios, a special segment that we have for you right now. Of course, Election Day coming up tomorrow. Tight races all over the state of Michigan, and we're going to welcome back into the show a couple people who've been on recently for the primaries and for the general election coming up. Pete Hoekstra and Bill Huizenga are joining us now live in studio. Gentlemen, how are we doing this afternoon?
Hey, Kevin, we're doing great.
Hey, it's a beautiful day out, feeding into Election Day. Perfect.
Excellent. Yeah, it's a beautiful day outside. Remember to get out and vote tomorrow. Election Day coming up tomorrow. Lots of important races around the state of Michigan. And guys, you've been campaigning for a long time now, the primaries, now to this general election. What are the biggest concerns you're hearing in the 2nd Congressional District in your campaigning? And where are your priorities going to lie, Bill, if you get to Washington?
Yeah, my priorities are going to lie right in line with what we're hearing out on the campaign trail, which is two things. Jobs and creating a private sector that's going to create jobs, and the debt. I've got 5 young kids. We've got sort of a little campaign bus going here with Congressman Hoekstra and myself and a number of other people around. And I've got my 5 kids on the bus with me, and that's really why we're doing this, is for the future of our country and to make sure that we've got a fiscally responsible decisions that are being made to pass along to them.
Again, we're joined by Bill Huizenga and Pete Hoekstra here live in the Mom Studios. And speaking of that campaign, it's been another nasty election cycle in a lot of ways, a lot of anger, a lot of hostility, a lot of fear around the country, which has led to a lot of personal attacks that I've really seen in the media in this state and throughout the country. And it appears the ads and the debates I've seen between you and your opponent, Fred Johnson, have been much cleaner as opposed to some of the other campaigns around the state. Is this a trend that you've seen from your peers that's troublesome to you, and why did you decide to go a different route?
Well, we decided to go a different route because of some of those concerns that we've heard from a number of people. I did this exact same thing in my primary, where we had a 7-way primary in the Republican election, and it got nasty, and we decided to just take the high road. And a lot of people told us they appreciated it, and I wanted to do the exact same thing in the general election. And one of my friends quipped that he thought, literally, I'm the only person out there that does not have a TV commercial that talks about China one way or the other. You kind of half expect those, ominous, Bill Huizenga likes Chinese food kind of things, And it's gotten a little ridiculous, but it will only work so as long as people vote that way. And the consultants, I'm really hoping that they're seeing some of that turnaround. And hey, I'm sitting next to a guy who suffered some pretty mean hits on character assassination here in the governor's race, and we've got to change that culture as far as I'm concerned.
Bill Huizenga, who's running for the 2nd congressional seat tomorrow in the general election, joining us in studio along with Representative Pete Hoekstra. And Bill, your pockets are definitely deeper than your opponent, Fred Johnson. You've raised some 5 times the amount of money. And sadly, because of what we've seen in Washington throughout the years, it raises concerns for some people. You've received some large contributions from political action committees. Your opponent was quoted as saying this about those contributions, quote unquote, "It points out a distinctive difference between us. On the one side, you have deep pocket corporate interests that are buying access to Washington one more time." So, Mr. Huizenga, how are these donations going to shape your role in Washington?
Well, let's first clear it up. I mean, he took $10,000 from the UAW. Now, what he was saying is that that doesn't count because those are from hardworking people. And I'm looking at him saying I don't quite understand how the people behind the National Federation of Independent Businesses. I was a former realtor. I used to donate to a PAC, the RPAC. And that those are individuals that are out there struggling to make sure that their voice is being heard as well. And have no doubt, if he could raise it, he would raise it. And I think that's been his real biggest challenge. But I've not had a problem going against people, whether it's individuals or whether it's a political action committee who I disagree with. It is not it's not quite as ominous as it is sometimes made out to be. But certainly money has had an influence on politics in the country. There's no doubt. But some of the way that the rules are set up with McCain-Feingold and some of those things really allow for the George Soroses of the world and those types of people to come in and it pulls that control away from the candidates and really puts it into the hands of some people that we'd rather it not be in.
Kevin O'Brien here on Mom Radio, joined by Bill Huizenga and Representative Pete Hoekstra. Bill, as a young voter, I'm going to tell you one of the most frustrating things for me is watching a lack of cooperation between the Democrats and the GOP. The House is expected to flip Republican tomorrow night, barring a miracle, but the president's still going to be a Democrat. Should we expect a stalemate for the next 2 years as you guys wait out the first term for Barack Obama, as the parties hold their ground, which we see happen time and time again? Or if you're elected, what are you planning on doing to change that, to reach some compromise, to reach across the aisle for even a little bit of give and take?
Yeah, and there's some different kinds of divides that happen in Washington, and we can talk about that. But I think Pete ought to address a little bit of this too, because he lived through it the last time it happened in 1994 with Bill Clinton, and I think there's the president is going to have to make a decision as well. Is he going to start acquiescing and start looking at ways to work with the other side, or is he going to sort of entrench himself as well? And I think that's the story that Pete could maybe talk a little bit about with Clinton. But there's some divides that happen. There are philosophical divides, those political divides that do happen. There's also geographic divides, but there's also some generational divide, and I think you're seeing that play out as well. And I think the patience of the American people is pretty thin. They're looking for some action and activity. And I plan on being able to work with members on the other side, as long as it doesn't compromise a core value. And I think people wouldn't want me to go do that. But we certainly can go out and make some progress.
Well, Pete, can you elaborate on that a little bit more? He was talking about back in '94, and obviously for the better part of 2 decades, you were sitting in this seat, and you saw changes go, the House, the Senate, it changed hands as far as party control. How difficult is it in Washington right now to work with the other sides when the anger is, running rampant throughout the House and the Senate?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily describe it as anger. The President Obama came in with 60 votes in the Senate. He came in with 257 votes in the House. They made a decision to govern and to govern with Democratic votes only. Not a whole lot different than what Bill Clinton did in 1993 and 1994. Bill Clinton lost, and the Democrats lost big in the 1994 elections. Some people predicted stalemate. You had two, what folks would identify as bitter partisans leading each political party. Bill Clinton leading the Democrats, Newt Gingrich leading the Republicans in the House. The end result is we cut taxes in a bipartisan way. We reformed welfare in a bipartisan way. We restrained spending, which led to economic growth. It led to balanced budgets for 4 years in a row at the end of the 1990s. And I'll give Bill Clinton credit. Bill Clinton set a tone that said, as president, I'm going to work with Republicans, and we're going to get some things done. Newt Gingrich responded favorably to that. House Republicans responded favorably to that. I think, I hope President Obama has the ability to kind of make that shift from being a very bitter partisan, if you listen to his rhetoric over especially the last 2 weeks, and that he will be able to come back and say and reach out to who I think will be the speaker, John Boehner, and say, let's work together, let's get some things done. I don't know. Bill Clinton had the ability to do that. He had the experience. He went through a tough time as governor in Arkansas. He was elected governor. He lost, then got reelected. He knew, he'd gone through that before. He knew what he had to do. Barack Obama has not gone through that kind of an experience. I think it'll be a tough 2 years. I hope it's a very successful 2 years in Washington for President Obama, and for what I expect will be a Bill Huizenga who's going to be in the majority, and a Republican Party that will elect the Speaker of the House.
Representative Pete Hoekstra on Mom Radio, and I'll turn back to you, Bill. Along with the economy and talking about jobs in Michigan, obviously that's number one, and I know you said that's what you're hearing on the campaign trail right now, but healthcare reform has also dominated the talk this season. Many Republicans have run on a platform to get rid of the programs that Obama has set in place. Others have talked about how much some of the programs have helped. I'll tell you, people like me, a 23-year-old who's been able to stay on my parents' insurance, there are some good things that I've taken from this. I'm assuming you want to get rid of Obamacare how it stands right now. But is there anything from that plan you support? If not, do you want to go back to how it was before? What changes do you think should be made as far as healthcare reform goes?
Yeah, Kevin, and that's actually a great question. I don't think anybody would view it as successful, just simply returning back to the status quo. But that kind of goes to what Pete was talking about. There were areas of agreement and compromise that could have been made, whether it was pre-existing conditions, which is a huge issue that people have to deal with. A way to make insurance more affordable and transportable as well. That's the other thing, and I hear that often from people sort of in your age bracket, and frankly my age bracket. I'm 41. As there's been some tough economic times. They're trying to figure out how can they make their health care portable as well. So are there some things? Absolutely. Are there some things that were out of it that could have been done, such as tort reform? That should have been added in there as well, because I think most people agree that we need to make healthcare more accessible and more affordable. Now the question is does this bill do that? I don't think it does ultimately in the long run. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal about a week or two ago from the Democrat governor of Tennessee, who had laid out a plan how he was going to save the state $146 million a year, literally by removing all of the health care from the state employees, paying that fine that the federal government put in place, paying the employees the sort of the makeup costs, and was going to shift it all onto the federal government. Well, it might save his state $146 million, but guess what? That's all going to be on the tax rolls and on the balance ledger sheet on the federal level. And that's our problem. We can't continue to keep spending the way that these bills are for our kids and our grandkids' sake.